Now, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, love, ? Has built a career as a lavish music mogul and businessman. He has built an obscene level of wealth on the backs of many artists' publishing rights. And this wealth and power has allowed him to obscure or hide the harm he's done to others. He's been able to demur from the accusation and to influence the harmed, as in those that he has harmed, that the proximity to him is too valuable to give up over the pursuit of accountability. Born November 4th, 1969, Sean Combs is currently 54 years old. He is a Harlem man through and through, and he came to prominence along with the fledgling cultural phenomena of hip-hop, as hip-hop entered into the fabric of American culture in the late 1990s.
I named it a bad boy because I wanted to go against the grain. Anytime you go against the grain, they consider you like kind of bad. Nothing negative, nothing like hardcore. Just, I didn't want to be regular.
He parlayed his music business into a successful solo career post the death of his most prominent artist, Biggie Smalls, or Notorious B.I.G. Then he took that success and evolved it into various successful ventures, including the clothing line Sean John and his very popular vodka brand Ciroc.
Let's be clear. Ciroc is for the culture.
Now, as Tracy McMillan Cotton put it in a sprawling Vanity Fair piece in 2021, beneath the showmanship was Combs, the innovator. He understood hip-hop as a lifestyle at a time before influencer had entered our cultural lexicon. His image looked larger than life in 1999, when consumers watched music videos on television and bought clothes at shopping malls. We were still sending SMS messages on our cellular phones and two-way pagers, as Combs was making hip-hop art that predated visually driven social media culture. He was a GIF machine before we knew what a GIF was, or how 15 years in the future, making viral content could turn anyone into a celebrity. Most of the celebrities from the Puff Daddy era are locked in a social media liminal space. Try to find, as I did recently, an Insta-quality image of your defining pop culture memories before 2010. There may be some YouTube video or a few grainy GIFs. You will remember the moments as important, the actors as celebrities, but they were massively huge before we had the technology and taste for content. Content now is king, and Combs was one of the first mega celebrities to turn music, art, fashion, and branding into a content machine. And that quote is the kindest thing I will have to say about Sean Combs in this video. Sean Combs is such a complex man with a complex history, and there's so many ways that we could start off looking at his history of abuse. But since there's so much overlap, let's just take it piece by piece and start off with the mothers of his children, plus the other women. Now, Combs, by his own admission, met all three of the mothers of his first 6 children in the same year, sometime in the early 1990s. And he revealed this, interestingly enough, on the Wendy Williams show in 2017.
I want to tell you the story about that. I met all of them in the same year, so I've known all of them the same amount of time, but we were friends. No, listen. Whoa, why did I do that?
That would be Misa Hilton, Kim Porter, and Sarah Chapman. And it's interesting that he admitted this to Wendy Williams in 2017, because Wendy Williams' book, published in 2004, The Wendy Williams Experience, which details Combs' relationship to his children's mothers via the retelling of an alleged interview with Misa Hilton.
So now you're building a name for yourself. At what point do things in your relationship with Puffy turn sour? You said Kim Porter. I didn't realize that she was in the picture for such an extended period of time. And so Misa replies, Kim was a friend of mine. And I say, what? A friend?
Now, Misa Hilton is the mother of his first child, Justin Combs, and Misa started dating him as a teenager in Harlem. They would have their first child in 1993. That same year, he started dating Kim Porter. Kim Porter would go on to birth him one son, Christian Combs, in 1998, and twin daughters. The same year that she gives birth to those twin daughters, Delilah and Jesse James, Kim's friend, Sarah Chapman, 5 months before the birth of the twins, gives birth to Puffy's daughter, Chance. Kim Porter dated Combs between 1993 and 2006, and not only does Kim's relationship with Combs overlap with her friend or former friend or whatever that didn't only overlap that relationship with Sarah Chapman, Kim's relationship also overlapped Combs' very infamous relationship with J-Lo, whom he dated between 1999 and 2001. With regards to Misa, Kim, and Sarah and the overlap in their relationships and the birth of their children, Combs, in that 2017 interview with Wendy Williams, had also gone on to say that
I was just trying to say it wasn't like I just was running around, through my career and just, every couple of years just being with a new person. Like these are people that were my friends, and then I would get my heart broken, and then my friend would be there, and I would fall in love with my friend, and then I would get my heart broken again.
Oh, poor guy. Somehow getting his heart broken while he is dating multiple women who know each other and then having children with multiple women who are friends at the same time.
It's an evil world we live in.
Now, unfortunately, Kim Porter suddenly and unexpectedly passed away in 2018. I cannot believe it's been that long. And posthumously, Combs has been very vocal about calling Kim Porter his one true love.
I met this beautiful young lady from Columbus, Georgia. I'm talking about this chick was the coolest, most graceful, most ghetto, most beautiful, most elegant, but most importantly, most loving person that I ever met.
To that, I quote my father, who always told me, make sure they give you your flowers while you can still smell them. And as much as I would love to continue calling him Combs, man, culturally, I just gotta stick to calling this man Puffy, who most recently fathered another child with Dana Tran in 2022. And I believe that daughter's name is Love. And yes, that relationship does overlap the relationship that Puffy has publicly had with the rapper Carisha, or Young Miami of the City Girls. Puffy has never hidden that he's a player, and he's inclined to brand himself as a lover man. And it has been interesting to watch this collection of women who have been betrayed by Puffy and seems like their own friends, for them to continue to be quiet and mindful in their manners when it comes to Puffy and his philandering. What did tip the scale and lead one mom to publicly admonish Puffy was the DUI arresting of Justin Combs in June of 2022, in which Misa Hilton, the mother of Justin, in a series of posts to her Instagram stories, Misa admonished Puffy, stating, "Everyone has to sit around for years and act like there isn't anything wrong with you. This is where the buck stops for me. I'm not protecting no one anymore, just my son." The statement of fish rots from the head down means that in addition to being a major contributing factor in a family or organization's success, leadership is also the root cause of its failure and demise. The truth shall set you free. Although not signed to Bad Boy Records, as a teenager, Usher was sent to stay with Combs to get acclimated to the music industry. And in a 2016 interview with Howard Stern, where Stern was questioning what a teenage Usher witnessed in a house with Combs, Usher acknowledged that he got a chance to see some things.
And you're going to go to Puff Daddy's. He's going
in the 90s. Do you understand what that's like?
Puffy's place was like just filled with chicks and orgying like nonstop, right?
No, not really. I mean, but hey, it was curious. I got a chance to see some things.
Yeah, but you were 13. What were you seeing?
I went there to see the lifestyle.
Right.
And I saw it. And it was but I don't know if I could indulge and understand what I was even looking at. It was pretty wild.
So nobody tried to, some woman didn't come along.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't say that. What I did say is that there were very curious things taking place. And I didn't necessarily understand.
Seeing as Usher has gone on to be a man who continually partners with significantly older women and has his own dubious history with the interactions with the mother of his children, I really do wonder what was actually happening in the house with a teenage Usher, why his parents would send them there in the first place, and how much guidance was Puffy truly providing.
I didn't want to just make records. I didn't want to just make money. I I wanted to make history. That's all it's ever been about for me, making history.
Now, much of Puffy's success comes from his dubious dealings in the music industry. I formerly worked in the music industry and had a lot of overlap with people that worked at Bad Boy Records. Now, this is a past lifetime, and I, for the life of me, do not remember a lot of names. I formerly worked in publishing at Universal Music Publishing Group, and I particularly understood how nefarious the publishing dealings were with Bad Boy Records, and I particularly remember that Combs had a older white woman, Francesca Sparrow, who was guiding him in how to handle the publishing and how to exploit it for the most profit. And I might be misspeaking, but from my memory, I do remember that the publishing team under Bad Boy was quite small, and it was headed up by this one individual who I'm thinking of, and they did a lot of artists very, very dirty. You know, I think when it comes to Biggie Smalls, who by most acclaims is Puffy's most successful artist, that they did not live long enough to have the public fallout with Puffy.
He was talking about how he wanted to give Tiana away at her wedding, and he wanted to see CJ graduate from high school, and, you know, all these different things that he said wasn't going to happen if he was out there wilding. That was Big's dream, was he basically wanted to be the suburban soccer dad that occasionally made hip-hop records.
Do you remember the last thing that you said to him or he said to you?
Yeah. I mean, he was just basically saying, like, he couldn't wait for his album to come out. That, you know, he was just happy that he had finished it. And he was just like, I just can't wait till my album comes out.
Because Biggie died so young, Puffy was able to maneuver and fully exploit the Biggie publishing rights for his own personal gain without much public ire or pushback.
It's like a Basquiat. Basquiat's not here. Nobody did what he did. He has paintings that sell for 200 million. Like a Biggie verse, listening to a Biggie verse, you feel like you're listening to something that value is going up. As things get more watered down, the purity and the rawness of that album, of both those albums, go up.
Because he could silence Biggie's family and control people who, because they didn't work in the industry, didn't have the opportunity to come to an understanding of how publishing actually works.
Some of some of his associates, I still want to strangle them.
Besides the big named artists that Puffy has notably scammed, such as the Lox, which includes Jadakiss, Sheek Louch, and Styles P, who had a very public fallout over their publishing with Puffy.
We made one record with you, Money, Power, Respect. It's 10 years later, and you still got half of our publishing. Now there's no way you can make it justifiable that you deserve half of our publishing. You never to my face. We just at the concert. You ain't saying nothing. What are we gonna do, Save it?
Mace, who's also been very vocal, Faith Evans, who in her memoir detailed her struggle to procure her publishing royalties under Bad Boy, the lesser-known rapper Mark Curry, who in 2009 released the memoir Dancing with the Devil that included a bevy of accusations against Puffy. From our memories of making the band, Dylan, more fire.
Dylan, because I spit hot fire.
When we laughed at the housemates walking across boroughs to procure cheesecake from the juniors in downtown Brooklyn to bring it back to Puffy, and we laughed at it, you know, that's called hazing.
If my cheesecake is in the least bit soft or brittle or not on point, we'll go back. Somebody gonna quit. Somebody ain't got the heart, the stamina to be bad boy. Somebody ain't got the passion, the drive, the intensity to want it. Somebody's mental capacity breaks at a certain point. I need to see it now. I want to see it when I'm 2 million in. There's things in life that ain't gonna be fair, and this is one of them. Get your faces right. Look at his face. Look at his face. Look at that. Son. Yo, Frederick, I can see Miami's calling you. It's hot there. It's hot there.
And we can't forget, but it's okay if we did, because this scene has largely been scrubbed from public media. But when making the band's celebrity choreographer Lorianne Gibson, yes, Boomcat Cat herself, alleged that while MTV was filming a scene between her, Diddy, and Michael Bivins for Making the Band 4, that Diddy and Bivins menaced her with a chair. She claimed that while Bivins held her down, Diddy picked up a chair to threaten her with after a verbal dispute erupted between them on on set. The early 2000s were a wild, wild time, and a lot of abuse was publicly happening, and we just consumed it like it was great media and great TV, and it really aged poorly.
If y'all bucking on this little right here, I definitely don't want to with y'all.
Niggas want this man, but we was just on the tip like you was trying to put us out there like a bitch or something, like make us walk all the way to Brooklyn, like, you know what I'm saying?
I don't really care however you took it or whatever went through your mind. It was a mission that had to be done. All this psychological, that's ego. So the ego's in your way. So the ego made the decision, especially with a like you, when I helped get your ass out of a situation and you looking at me in my face telling me you ain't gonna do something. I can see if I told you to go rob a bank, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing some, I'm gonna go get some cheesecake. You got that much ego? Go do your thing, man. Don't sit here and be talking about it, man.
It's not about me trying to do a mean-spirited initiation hazing act to them. It's a bigger picture to it. In the world of music, I gotta get up every day and do a bunch of that I don't wanna do. I gotta bite my tongue and I gotta do it with a smile on my face. But I do want some cheesecake.
The handling of Day 26 and Danity Kane, where we have an Aubrey O'Day who's been very, very vocal about the unethical treatment by Bad Boy Records. We also have to include some of the lesser known artists. Where is Sherry Dennis? Bad Boy Records signed a all-white girl group, Dream, and those young women, shortly after having their music released, within years were featured in documentaries showcasing them working in the food service industry.
We had it all, and we thought it was just the beginning. But boy, were we wrong.
One of them posted to Instagram stating, at 15 years old, my singing group, Dream Girl Group, was signed to Bad Boy Entertainment by the legend Puffy himself. The money that funded us was from a production company called Clockwork Entertainment. A woman named Debbie Hammond owned it. She threw a 2-inch contract on the table in her Laguna Beach home and told us and our parents, sign it or kill your daughter's dreams. We signed it. In the contract, we were tied to doing 7 albums, getting almost no money from our work. But I do remember going over albums, points, and royalties, and the girls and I also wrote the song Pain on the album, and we've never received a fucking dime. Oh, and I also had my own doll in Walmart, which was a $1 million deal plus commissions on sales. To everyone who was involved, you effed up. You didn't know that one day the world will have social media, a place to be our own news sources. I'm coming for my money, and whatever dirt is left behind, I will show. Because that 15-year-old girl is now a grown woman. Time to pay up. Hashtag bitch better have my money. The most egregious handling of a Bad Boy Entertainment artist would be with the treatment of the rapper Shine, whose baritone voice delivered quick hits for Bad Boy Records in the late 1990s. Now, after a scandalous night out at the club with Puffy and the woman he was publicly claiming at the time, J-Lo, leading to a shootout.
Puffy and Shine allegedly got into an argument with another partier shortly before 3 a.m. Someone tossed a wad of cash at Combs as a sign of disrespect. Suddenly, all hell broke loose.
And at some point, one of those people in that group fired off guns and other gunfire was had.
Both Shine and Puffy pled not guilty in court. While Puffy was acquitted of all charges, Shine was convicted of reckless endangerment and illegal possession of a firearm and served an almost 10-year prison sentence from 2001 to 2009. In retrospect, Shine, who is now running for political office in his home country of Belize, claimed in a recent interview on Drink Champs that
I don't really blame that on him now, as much as I did then, because I did go through a stage of bitterness.
You're human.
But in retrospect, I blame it more on the lawyers that were advising him
to separate the case
than him, because his lawyers were there, to secure a not guilty verdict by any means.
Many believe that Shine took a hit and covered for Puffy. And maybe in some way Shine did, because Shine alludes to being thrown under the bus by Puffy's lawyers.
He's a corporation, $100 million corporation. And, they look at me as the enemy. When your lawyers and maybe other people are misleading you and misguiding you, I think that's how everything, fell apart. And he said that to me.
Right, it's beautiful.
He said, man, I'm sorry, man. I should have never listened to those lawyers.
That's real.
And, I forgave him.
But now, in retrospect, not blaming Puffy, because he goes on to detail that Puffy had a lot going on and he was a businessman, and people wanted to protect their business interests, and they were just trying to get a not guilty verdict at whatever means necessary, and those means meant throwing Shine under the bus. Puffy's track record with artists again and again and again is no secret. It's almost very well known in the music industry. So I personally was very astonished when I got news from my friends at Bad Boy Records that Janelle Monáe had signed to the label in late 2007. And though it seems that the structure of her deal, and particularly her Wonderland Art Society label, has allowed her to maintain control over her artistry, Janelle Monáe does seem to have the most successful track record with Bad Boy Records. Now, shout out to today's sponsor, Surfshark, which is giving an exclusive deal with the promo code JulesieDeal. You can go to surfshark.com or just use my link down below to get up to 81% off their VPN services. And I would highly recommend Surfshark One, where you can search the internet privately. My favorite thing to use Surfshark VPN for is to check flight prices, because the price gouging is too much and changing your location literally oftentimes can get you cheaper flights. The antivirus armor, I don't know what's been happening, but the spam has gotten out of control. It's gotten more devious and it's gotten more consistent and frequent. So antivirus protection is definitely necessary. It alerts you to monitor data breaches when your name and intel ends up somewhere it should not. And it allows you to search the internet privately and pull up streaming services in some locations that's blocked, baby. These licensing agreements that block you with different locations when you already pay for all the streaming services, get the full use out of them. Use that Surfshark VPN. Don't forget to use my code JulesieDeal to get a great deal that gives you almost 6 months free on the services, and or click my link down below and go ahead and sign up, because having a safer internet via Surfshark is definitely a way to go. And thank you to them for making this video possible. As a music executive, Puffy has engaged in an egregiously long list of violent acts that he's been able to shuffle his way around. He kicked off his career with a 1991 celebrity charity basketball game at City College in New York City that ended with a crowd surge that killed 9 people. As a primary promoter, Puffy and the rapper Heavy D were found equally liable for the tragedy, and it took almost 10 years for the bevy of wrongful death and personal injury lawsuits to all be settled for Puff Daddy. In 1995, Puffy's limo driver claimed in a lawsuit that he was beaten by the bodyguards Puffy hired to protect Mary J. Blige. While the driver initially won the lawsuit via default judgment because Puffy did not appear in court, the ruling would be overturned on appeal in 2004 in favor of Puffy. I'm so amused that his supposed assault of Steve Stout, who's another notable music and marketing executive, has just kind of flown under the radar when he in 1999 allegedly assaulted Steve Stout over Nas's Hate Me Now video.
Combs was arrested on charges of second-degree assault and criminal mischief in connection with last Thursday's alleged attack on Interscope executive Steve Stout, who also serves as Nas's manager and executive produced Nas's album I Am. According to the police report, Combs and 2 other unidentified men entered Stout's office around 4:30 p.m. and attacked him, leaving him with a fractured arm and numerous cuts and bruises.
Once you do a video a certain way at the last minute, that's really not professional to do business like that, really, I thought, you know what I mean?
Puffy is showcased on a cross along with Nas, and then sitting among an ostentatious show of material wealth with diamonds and women, and it's like, you agreed, you showed up to the shoot day, you sat down for all the shoots, you were an active participant. It's not like we had that great of CGI at that time. Like, you were very much so in them scenes in that video.
I like this. I like the way this feels.
And all of a sudden, when that video came out and sparked a lot of controversy, you were mad at the exec for the video that you shot?
In the world of music, I gotta get up every day and do a bunch of that I don't wanna do. I gotta bite my tongue and I gotta do it with a smile on my face.
When he, in 1999, assaulted Stout, who was then an executive at Interscope Records, Stout would go on to ask the Manhattan District Attorney to drop the charges. And it's alleged that all it took for Puffy's troubles to go away was a mere payment of $500,000 to Steve Stout. Puffy would win another 1999 lawsuit in 2004, where Detroit TV host Roger Mills claimed Puffy and Entourage attacked Mills after refusing to sell Puffy a video interview where Puffy supposedly spoke on his involvement in the murder of Biggie Smalls. Mills alleged that Puffy and Entourage committed assault, false imprisonment, and destruction of property. To close out 1999 with the aforementioned nightclub shooting that took place with Shine, it wouldn't be until 2011 that the multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed by 3 people injured at the club was settled by Puffy for an undisclosed amount. Now, earlier this year in 2023, it was announced that Sean Combs, after 30 years of profiting from the Bad Boy artist publishing, that he was finally returning the publishing rights to almost all the artists on the Bad Boy roster. And that included to the estate of Biggie Smalls. You went to that man's funeral, you watched his family grieve, and you still waited almost 20-something years to give that family his publishing rights. Some would allege that filing like Cassie's lawsuit, which is very detailed, it comes with a trigger warning, it was announced via the New York Times, this was very thoroughly thought out and planned, that sort of lawsuit would be ran by Puffy. It is sort of standard procedures, particularly in civil lawsuits, to attempt to mediate before filing, and Puffy likely would have been given significant leeway in being informed about this upcoming lawsuit, meaning he probably knew about it sometime in 2022, last year. So it is interesting about the timeline of when Puffy decides to give back the publishing rights to artists.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was the right thing to do, and it's the frequency that I'm in, and it's the love frequency.
These rights have largely been what he's been able to exploit to make money. And there also can be the critique for quite a few of these artists that Puffy owned the publishing rights when the music was in its prime, when it was most profitable, and now these songs are worth what? When they're not getting radio spins, when they're not being licensed out, when they're not being used, and the popularity has significantly waned down of these songs, what are you really doing by returning these publishing rights so long after signing these artists? If anything, Puffy knows how to spin the news and evolve his brand to downplay accusations of harm doing.
What do you say to the people who say they feel like the publishing has no value now and you've already made all your money off it, so now you want to give it back because it's not really worth anything?
Yeah, I mean, that's just not the truth. Whatever your value of your publishing is, that's the value of your publishing, and it's really about just me.
There are a bevy of lawsuits before we even get to the Cassie lawsuits that Puffy has been caught up in. And there is a pattern of allegations that emerges when you look at just a handful of the lawsuits that have previously been filed against him. In 2007, a Los Angeles partygoer accused Puffy of punching him in the face and assaulting his girlfriend in a lawsuit that was settled for an undisclosed amount in 2008. Now, coming back around to that pin we stuck in the story of Francesca Sparrow, who helped make Bad Boy a success through highly exploitative practices. She herself will go on to file a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for age discrimination in 2010 that would also go on to be settled for an undisclosed amount. In May 2017, a former private chef alleged that Puffy and friends exposed themselves to her. She alleged that she was regularly summoned by Mr. Combs to prepare and serve entrees and appetizers to him and his guests, while Mr. Combs and or his guests were engaged or immediately following sexual activity. She worked from 9 a.m. to midnight 2:30 a.m., plenty of days for $150 a day. Now, a spokesperson at the time for Combs' company issued the response that this was a frivolous lawsuit by a disgruntled ex-employee who was fired for cause. However, that lawsuit being filed in 2017 was finally settled for undisclosed terms in February 2019. September of 2022, Puffy was again sued by a former nanny who claimed she was wrongfully terminated after filing for maternity leave. We don't know where that lawsuit currently stands, but obviously Combs and his team deny all accusations. When we get to the particulars of the 35-page lawsuit that Cassie recently filed, a lawsuit that comes with its own trigger warning and has made for much fodder and discussion on social media in the past week, there's a lot to be said and really not so much that needs to be said. The accusations are laid very blatantly clear in the lawsuit. Cassie, born in 1986, is currently 37 years old. Please remember that Puffy is 54. It's claimed, and I've seen a lot of people bringing up other people who could possibly feel vindicated or like highlighting Combs' pattern of abuse. I think we so often don't actually get caught up in having productive conversations and talking about the hard things, the complicated things, the morose things. And when we do engage in the morose, we often engage in it from the perspective of a spectacle, of the lore of it, of, ooh, it's gossip, ooh, it's just a fun thing to talk about. We don't actually engage with how these patterns of harm are replicated in our own community, how we can evolve society, how we can change society to mitigate, to stop, to lessen, to decrease this kind of harm and abuse and violence, not only happening to people, but people being allowed to go on to become celebrated individuals in our community when they have such blatant patterns of abuse within people that come into close contact with them. And within that discourse and that sort of gossip and the spectacle of it all, I've seen plenty of people bring up Ryan Leslie, the music producer who introduced Cassie to Puffy. And Ryan Leslie was a producer on Cassie's first album, and claiming that, oh, how sad it was that Puffy took Cassie from Ryan Leslie. As we correctly know that Puffy groomed Cassie, who was 19 years old at the time of them meeting and entering into a relationship, then Ryan Leslie was her first groomer. He was the first predator. Ryan Leslie is born in 1978. He's currently 45 years old. That is 8 years older than Cassie. Bringing up Ryan and his mysteriously stolen laptop as if, ooh, look how bad of a man Puffy is because look how horribly he treated Ryan. No, they're two bad men with bad ethics, okay? It's actually sort of a symptomatic of a lot of men in the music industry. Word to Drew Dixon, who has been one of the rare voices advocating against a history of sexual abuse in the music industry.
We fight this uphill battle as a community every day that tells us and tells the world that Black men are inherently dangerous. And with life or death consequences for Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown, and real life and death consequences for Black men, this myth is dangerous. And so I did not want to do anything to add to that mythology. I really worried that we were going to miss this whole moment altogether. And so I ultimately made the decision that it was more important for me as a Black woman to step forward to make a way, hopefully, for other Black women to feel like we too are part of Me Too.
Particularly to Cassie's case, this question about why it took her so long and how we remember Cassie in the public eye, this young girl who was attached to the hip of Puffy, who was walking down red carpets with him and living this high life, and wanting to use that as if to say, well, she went along with it. Why would she be calling it abuse now? And the fact of the matter is that when it comes to abuse, when it comes to mistreating, a lot of us don't understand because how we're socialized, how we are often socialized to believe that if we feel any harm, if we feel any less than, if we feel like something negative is happening to us, that we have to first turn internal and look at ourselves first, not at the people doing the harm to us. A lot of us are socialized to not name the harm, to not consider things harm, and to self-reflect first and absorb the shame internally. It is not unusual that Cassie did not realize the abuse she was encountering until she was outside of the relationship, until she was able to move away from Puffy. A man as powerful and wealthy as him is often able to silence people. You know, when you think of the Oprah Winfrey interview with Meghan Markle, and she says,
"Were you silent or were you silenced?"
And in that moment, Markle is processing something that she didn't even realize. Like, you can be going through things and just so set on moving on and, you know, keeping a positive mindset that you don't realize things are happening to you. The psychology of understanding abuse is a very complex web because, especially as women, how we are socialized to not believe that we are being harmed. Now, the Cassie lawsuit was a civil lawsuit filed in the Federal District Court of Manhattan. Her case was brought under the Adult Survivors Act, a New York State law that was passed last year for people that have claims of being victims of sexual abuse, but the statute of limitations has expired, giving it a 1-year window to extend that statute and allow them to file their claims. The New York Times has an article on the passing of this law where they highlight Drew Dixon, who, as I noted earlier, been a rare voice in calling out music industry executives like L.A. Reid, who she accuses of sexual assault. She was involved in advocating for the passing of this bill because what happens is with the statute of limitations, bringing these sort of cases and advocating for these sort of rights, and whether you get the DA to consider pressing criminal charges or you press your own civil lawsuit, takes equity, takes time, money, and labor that people at the time when they're going through this, because they're often young, they often lack the equity, they lack the resources to pursue these sort of cases, they don't have, and then they don't necessarily have the support to psychologically process going through, you know, collecting this sort of evidence and retelling these sort of very violent situations that the statute of limitations, which I believe initially is 7 years, doesn't really allot for people to be able to be in the position to file these sort of cases. And so this 1-year window allowed Cassie, now as a grown woman in a stable relationship, in a place where she can process filing and doing all the due diligence it takes to put together a lawsuit like this where she can take on that task. With the 1-year window coming to a close at the end of this year, she took up the opportunity and procured the right lawyers. And this is all a very, very labor-intensive process. I think it's very telling that not TMZ, not Hollywood Unlocked, not these gossip rags reported this lawsuit, but that the New York Times, and I think that was a very conscious, that was a very strategic, and that meant that everybody had to keep their mouth shut. They went about this in a very specific manner to ensure that the New York Times was the first to publish the news of the lawsuit. And the New York Times went through the process of validating and verifying certain accusations that were put into the lawsuit. They were able to confirm with Kid Cudi that Cassie's accusation of his car being blown up after Puffy finds out that Cassie's in a relationship with him and then makes a blatant threat to Cassie that she's going to blow this man's car up. Cudi's team confirmed that his car, in fact, at that time, that Cassie claims was blown up. The accusations were true. People are now pulling up media clips to confirm the various elements of the lawsuit. We have Young Jock in a 2022 DJ Vlad interview tell a story of Cassie shaving her head at the request of Diddy.
My wife right here, Cassie right here. The nigga jumped off the bar, came on and said, yo, Cassie, tomorrow, I want you to shave the side of your head. And I was like, what the fuck kind of request is that? So when I'm like, what the fuck? So when I look up there, this white woman's side of her head was shaved, my nigga. And the bitch looked good with it. So I was looking at Cassie, I was like, I was like, you're not about to do that, are you? She said, well, I mean, whatever Sean wants, I'm gonna do.
The detail in the accusations in the lawsuit are very vivid and can be very triggering for some folk. Cassie claims that Puffy continuously provided copious amounts of drugs like ecstasy and ketamine, that she was consistently urged to take them. During these drug binges, Puffy would become violent and that she was beaten several times, that she was frequently isolated from her support network when she was beaten and there was physical evidence that she had been harmed by Puffy. She would be sent to hotels and not allowed to see family or friends. And Cassie claims that Puffy would have her search escort websites for male sex workers. Cassie claims that she's had to deal with an addiction to drugs and alcohol that were fueled by Diddy. Altogether, there are about 8 causes of action in the lawsuit that include sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and hostile work environment, gender-motivated violence, sex trafficking, sexual battery, sexual assault. Within 3 days of this lawsuit being filed, there was a settlement reached. The terms are undisclosed and likely will never be disclosed. In my opinion, that means that Puff Daddy did not want to go through discovery because he has the means, he has the money, he has the lawyers. He could go through this civil lawsuit and stretch it out. And if there was any possibility of launching a campaign that would prove his innocence, I think he would have taken it up. But the discovery on this, the details on this, the names on this was too much to take to trial for one Puffy. And so they settled. And to close this out, I would like to quote Jessica Lee's tweet: "Abusive, toxic, egomaniacs often find success because they're awful people, not despite it. They'll do anything to get ahead, underpay, manipulate, steal, abuse, and yes, sometimes even kill. No deed is too low in their pursuit of wealth, power, and status." And I will say, in the achievement of that wealth, power, and status, they're often able to hide their abuse, to stop people from reporting, pay them off. When we think about this constant conversation of would you take $500,000 or lunch with Jay-Z, that's the exact sort of thinking that allows this sort of harm to be obscured. When you think the proximity of this person, that's the time you can spend picking their mind and getting information and getting connections and being in their circle is going to provide you with so many more opportunities that they can get away with such nasty behavior, with such violent acts to other people, because not only can they silence their victims, but they can cultivate a community of people who will enable their bad behavior. Part of why the music industry has not had its moment, its Me Too moment, its bringing down of these executives, because I have stories. I witnessed a lot of things. That's why so many people are not coming to the events of Puffy, because a lot of this stuff lines up with what we already knew about him. But there is a network of people that enable this. I really hope that we can, as a society, work towards not being so enamored by wealth.